Alright, so we have a new episode of Smiling Friends called Brother's Egg, and the plot for it is pretty much this. After some of the boss's usual tomfoolery, Pim and Charlie are assigned with helping a mad scientist with an egg dilemma. Alright, let's get into some of the things that happened in this episode, and the first thing that happened was apparently the Smiling Friends are just watching this random documentary about these very big people who seem to be fighting over some kind of food. And we all know that Alan doesn't care about anything, but he especially does not care about this, and he wants to turn it off. Then we get a weird alarm pretty much notifying the Smiling Friends to go meet the boss. But then the boss pretty much just tells Pim and Charlie that their job is to help a scientist smile. But before that happens, we actually get like a little prank that happens where pretty much it's about Jared Fogle. And if you don't know who that is, then I guess you're a lucky person. But pretty much they're forced to make this guy smile, but it turns out it's actually Glip, who somehow managed to fit in that costume. But then they're forced to actually go and make someone smile due to the boss actually making this like weird dog face. Or I guess you could say like puppy dog eyes. Which, if I'm being honest, obviously they were going to do anything he wanted, he's the boss. So I don't think that his dog face really had much of an impact on them, especially Charlie. So Pim and Charlie end up going through this weird tunnel, which is apparently where this weird guy is located. And before we see the scientist, a worm just gets crushed out of nowhere, which sets the tone immediately. But we actually end up learning that this scientist pretty much uses his DNA with chickens. And judging the look of this guy, I don't know if he's fully human, but whatever he is, he's trying to mix himself with the chickens. And he actually doesn't even care about being able to smile. He just wants to have someone actually help him with his science experiments. Because as we learn pretty quickly, it's not going to be his brother, who, let's just say as of right now, do not have the best relationship. Also, while this scientist guy is giving this like very evil monologue, his brother literally just crashes into this like monologue and just starts cooking him. And he starts roasting him about how bad his job is and how he's not making any money and how he has to do everything. And pretty much since his mom died, he's been acting pretty much very strange. Not him, the brother, but just like the scientist guy. And once again, like I've said for like the past couple of weeks, the way Smiling Friends is able to make this look like a realistic conversation is probably the funniest part for this part, and not necessarily the accuracy of the conversation. And also, I feel like Charlie and Pim in this situation where you feel like you shouldn't actually be listening to this. And this is so bad that apparently Charlie and Pim start speaking Spanish to try and figure out a plan to help this guy out. And by the way, I'm pretty sure for like the amount of episodes we've gotten of Smiling Friends from season 1 and 2, I don't think Charlie and Pim have ever spoken Spanish in any way whatsoever, so that's how you know the situation is bad. And they definitely got like Spanish voice actors to do this. And it's actually pretty funny because the scientist actually apparently just knows Spanish because of course he does. So the plan pretty much is that Charlie's going to spend some time with the scientist, and it seems like Pim's going to spend some time with the brother. And Charlie and the scientist seem to be having like a wonky conversation. And obviously the scientist is obsessed with life. So Charlie gives him the idea of like creating a life with a woman, which I don't know if you could tell this guy clearly has never been with a woman before. And his attempt to, I guess, court a woman is by grabbing her by the arm and saying things that you should not just say to really anyone at all, but especially a woman that you just met. And like any woman in that situation, she screams for her life. And Charlie and I had pretty much the same reaction. I don't know why the scientist thought that was a good idea to court any kind of woman. Like, I understand he hasn't been around women, but like, I didn't know it was that bad. And Pim actually ends up helping the brother, not really helping him because the brother does not care about his help at all. But we do end up learning a lot about them. Like, pretty much since their mother died, apparently the scientist guy spent all of their money that they got from their mom. And how David pretty much had to take on a lot of responsibility because it seems like the scientist just didn't want to do that. Also, the way that this like somewhat of this conflict starts to like build up towards a resolution is some other brother apparently just dying out of nowhere. Obviously, David tried to warn him about the object that was coming towards him, but obviously he wasn't paying attention. And it took another brother who also was just mourning over the death of his brother for David to realize that maybe his situation isn't so bad. Which, by the way, was a very big plot convenience. So with David now appreciating his brother, it seems like they're going to finally work things out. And we end up getting into this therapy session where David actually seems very sorry and appreciative of his brother. But the scientist does not care at all, and even calls him out on taking painkillers, which David did not like at all, and they end up getting into a fight. And I don't know about you guys, but it definitely looked real. In terms of them using like actual people for the fight, and maybe they use some kind of like green screen or animation. And as this fight breaks out into the actual science room where they're still like beating the shit out of each other, and I don't know who was really winning the fight, I think it was pretty even. The chicken that the scientist has been working on this entire episode actually ends up hatching. And the chicken pretty much immediately tries to stop the fight from happening. And then the brothers actually end up, acknowledging that they need to put their differences aside and actually help this little chicken thing and actually help it become like whatever it's going to become. Because they both realize, especially David, surprisingly, how big of a deal this is. And then they end up smiling, which means that Charlie and Pim's job is actually over. I didn't end up seeing the post-credit scene, so I don't know what exactly happened there. But overall, this was a pretty good episode. Not my favorite episode of the season, but definitely one of my favorites. So until then, see ya.